This is One on One. Governor David Paterson, former governor of the great state of New York, who can be heard every day on WOR 710 radio, 4 to 6 p.m. Is that not a fact?
That is a fact, and sometimes when I'm not around, you can hear Steve Adubato at that time on WOR.
We should let folks know that we work together a lot over there. I am your guest host when you occasionally take vacation time. And I try to do some commentary there as well. Hey, how much do you love talk radio?
Well, I think I love talk radio the way people love trees or parks because I just grew up in it. They did not have the services for the blind that they have now, and you can voice activate things from the internet and that kind of thing. So I would listen to talk radio. And I think it also taught me to listen to people you might not agree with because you can always learn something. So sometimes I didn't have as many choices as people have today, even in talk radio, but there were certainly learning opportunities in a lot of these places.
David David and I call each other by their first name, but Governor Paterson. David, for those who do not know, how did you lose your eyesight?
Well, I don't know, and if anyone does, they should tell me. But I suffer from optic atrophy, which is scarred tissue between the retina and the optic nerve. It is usually caused by overheated incubators, but there's no record of me being incubated. There are cases similar to this, but no one knows what their origin is. So I have basically had this condition for my whole life.
Politics in your life. We'll talk about talk radio in a minute, but politics in your life. Growing up as a kid. It was
Same
part of
thing.
life.
Same trouble.
But talk about your family in politics.
My father ran for the state senate in Manhattan in 1965. I was 11 years old. I went out and campaigned for him. I found it very exciting. I got to talk on the little sound truck. They don't have them as much anymore. They'd go around and tell people to come out to vote on a certain day. And of course, but I think even prior to that, I watched Bobby Kennedy speak at the Democratic National Convention in Atlantic City in 1964. The only time he mentioned his brother in a speech. And it made me want to be like him. And I think that's what started it. And then as time went on, I was always some way involved. Although when I actually ran for office, I was probably further away from politics than at any point. I'd just taken some time off. I was working in the district attorney's office, and I was working for a man named David Dinkins, who would become mayor of the city of New York. And I was fundraising, so I wasn't really in the political operation. And one night, they said that Dinkins couldn't cover someplace, and the person who usually takes his place isn't there. So go speak at this club. And I went to this political club, and they yelled at me for the whole night. It was unbearable. And then finally, they said, well, look, thanks for coming. And this woman said, I have one more question. I thought, oh, no. And she said, when are you going to run for office? Because I can't believe that you could stand here and take this beating and not react to it. And about 2 weeks later, the state senator in our area died, and some of the same people who yelled at me supported me to take his place.
So in a lot of ways, you're not a natural politician. You were not a natural politician, whatever the heck that means.
No. And I think not being a natural politician hurt me at the end of my service when I was governor.
How so?
Well, you know, right now we're seeing a situation where a number of people on both sides of the aisle have gotten into all kinds of trouble. Usually when they get in trouble is when they start thinking that they are above the people and above the law. So right now we have a whole issue in Washington about lack of cooperation with investigations on leaks and also the Fast and Furious gun exchange campaign down in Mexico. And I know some of the people who are involved, and I don't know them to be the kind of people that they're being accused of being. But I do know that when people get into positions where they have a lot of power and they have a lot of protection, they can abuse authority and often not even particularly be aware of it. I was the opposite. I never wanted to see myself as being better than anyone else, never really saw myself as being a governor type, and there were times when I should have been and wasn't. So that's how it hurt me. Times when I should have taken the reins, but was acting in a kind of egalitarian way. In other words, we don't do anything until everybody agrees to it, and that's when you don't get much done.
We're talking with former governor of New York, David Paterson, who could be heard every day on WR 710 radio, 4 to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. David and I have worked together on the air many, many times, and he's easy to work with. I have to say this in terms of chemistry, and I know people could say this about a lot of situations, but I remember the first time I talked to you, it just felt easy to talk to you, and that's not always the case in our industry.
I felt the same way. Steve, you have a way of communicating with people that demonstrates a great deal of substantive knowledge, but it's balanced almost in a way like you're talking to your neighbor.
You notice I don't interrupt you when you're saying good things about me. Talk about, we'll talk again, we'll come back to the biggest challenges and the things you love about your work on the radio, but when you were governor, and obviously you became governor under some pretty interesting circumstances in connection with Eliot Spitzer, most frustrating part of about being governor?
The most frustrating part about being governor is that you can't change an institution alone. And I came into office with a staff comprised of Pataki holdovers, Spitzer staff persons who were very upset about his leaving office and sometimes just couldn't decide whether they wanted to be there or not, and a few people that I brought. If I could do it again, and I came into office 2 weeks before a budget was due. Somehow we still passed the budget within a week of when it was constitutionally mandated to be passed. But what I should have done was stopped and reorganized this staff, because I never really got that I was getting the cooperation that I should have.
Speaking about executive leadership, David, you and I have again had this conversation on the radio side. Let's do it on the PBS side. We're taping this program in the summer of 2012, and so it'll air before the election, and we'll probably date ourselves and air it as well after. So let's play the game. President Obama, right now, you've said some good things about him and some not so good things about him. His presidency, rate it.
I think his presidency is a C+. I think that the president can recite the lyrics but doesn't understand the music. I think when he first came into office, he should have really drilled down on the budget, been brutally honest with the American people. I think he was still in the hope and change mode, that forget about what's going on, we're going to fix it all. I think he had to let the American people know this was going to be a 5-year struggle to get through this budget deficit. Instead, he tried to reform energy policy, and he tried to reform health care, which are important issues, but were ancillary to what Americans were going through at the time. When they had the explosion in the Gulf, I want my president to be agitated. I want my president to shut down all the tankers that could possibly blow up in the area. He's standing on the beach with his sleeves rolled up, looking like a college professor. He's got to look as affronted as the people who live there were. That's what President George W. Bush, who's roundly criticized, but he was able to make that connection. I do think that the president made some good moves on the economy. We were losing 600,000 jobs a month when he came in, and he got us more on the right track. I don't think he should be blamed more than anyone else inheriting the problems that he did. I think he's about where any other person in the Oval Office would be at this particular time. But as we come into this election period, what I've noticed early on is a disturbing willingness to attack the other side, where the Barack Obama, who won in 2008, was the candidate who kind of hung around and let the other candidate lose, which is what John McCain did. He beat himself. And almost every candidate that ever ran against Barack Obama, going back to his state Senate days and his U.S. Senate days, beat themselves. Why this administration is choosing to try to distract everyone to what former Governor Romney is doing bemuses me.
But Governor, you have to connect every day on the radio on WR. Are you saying that you think Mitt Romney connects with people? that Mitt Romney connects with
No,
people
I don't.
on a
I don't
human
think that
level?
Governor Romney
Middle-class
connects
people,
with
working-class
people, and I'll tell you right now, I don't think Governor Romney is going to win the election because I don't think he, for a long period of time in the Republican primaries, it was anybody but Romney, and I think the American people are going to see it that way as well. So I think that we are going to re-elect President Obama, and I hope in his second administration that he is not so distant from reality that he can learn from some of the errors of his first administration.
David, let me ask you this. Describe your experience as a talk show host on the radio at WOR. Describe actually being on the air and engaging that audience.
I love to talk to people. I love being on talk radio. I think more about the conversation than the production. So when I'm having a good conversation, I don't like to break, even though we have to break. I recognize.
I've seen you blow through so many breaks on.
Yeah. Oh, I blow through the hourly news. I blow through
know.
the end of the show and made Michael Savage wait. I'm the only person that's ever done that.
Exactly.
And maybe I'm better for PBS because I don't seem to work well that way. But one thing that they kept telling me I was doing, and I tried to change it, is they wanted me to really open up and be myself. Tell people how you really feel. And I felt that that would be used against me because even though I'm a talk show host, I'm still the former governor. And sure enough, right after Jerry Crowley, the general manager, and Scott Lakefield, the program director, really got me to understand to do this. And I started doing it. Within the first 2 weeks, I made a comment saying to people who really believe that President Obama was not born in the United States, and I believe he was.
Clearly.
Look, if you really believe it, let it go, because you've lost in the court of public opinion. And sometimes, frustrating as it is, somebody does something, you really believe they did it, but they got away with it. Let them move on. Sure enough, some hack reporter made it appear that I was saying that the president got away with it. And I had to go through, 2 days of headlines and calls from people I know are in the administration now. But, I guess now that I've done it and now that I took the hit for it, I realized that you've got to engage and let people see who you are and not be hesitating or halting. Because I knew that as soon as I opened up, somebody would twist it and make it look like something it wasn't.
Well, people are not going to twist your words here. We're not going to edit your words, Governor. People got to see you here on public television. So whether you're here on public television or every day on WOR 710 Radio 4 to 6, we learn from you. So we appreciate you coming in and joining us here and one-on-one at the Tisch WNET studios. Former New York Governor David Paterson, thank you for being with us. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you, Steve.
This special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center. Funding has been provided by Hackensack University Medical Center, Bloomfield College, offering small classes and big opportunities since 1868, New Jersey Manufacturers Insurance Group, auto insurance, homeowners insurance, and banking under the principle of stewardship, and by Verizon Communications. Promotional support provided by The Record, North Jersey's trusted source, and NorthJersey.com. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area. One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been produced in partnership with St. Joseph's Healthcare System.